Oh my god. This is the third time I've filmed this video. I've been having so many audio issues. Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Dion, and today I'm gonna take you on a little journey through the history of ski fashion. I was originally gonna do like an 80s ski aesthetic video, and when I was looking at photos, I just fell in love with so many decades and I sort of got down a rabbit hole. I don't normally do sort of like historical timeline-y videos, sort of a study of style kind of vibe, but yeah, it's sort of different. I hope you guys like it. Before we get into it, make sure you subscribe to my channel if you are not already, because I post videos every Thursday. And with that, let's get into the video for the third time. So we're going to start off in the basically pre-1950s, because post-1950s, that's when like skiing really popped off and became more of a normalized hobby. In the early 1900s, it was really only for wealthy men, especially white men, and eventually women sort of started becoming or being allowed to come. And the fashion was mostly focused on functionality. So just, plain old staying warm kind of thing. Women wore heavy skirts and massive furs. Most of the gear was very weighty, very heavy and chunky. And the men were wearing like trousers and blazers to like reflect their class and wealth and everything. In the 20s, gabardine was marketed by Burberry. It's originally made of a twill woven wool, but can be made of other materials, not just wool. That revolutionized weather gear. It kept you very dry. It sort of allowed the water or the snow to bead off rather than soak in the wool. And it kept you just warm and dry, which was awesome. It was lightweight, and it became sort of the new norm for weatherproofing gear. Tight trousers with banded bottoms also were seen on the slopes to keep out water. And after World War I, it was more normalized for women to wear pants. So gone were the massive skirts women had to ski in the early 1900s. Now they're allowed to wear pants. Thank God. In the 30s, downhill skiing became more popular, and it also became like a little bit more accessible. People had a little bit of money. This was a tiny bit before the Great Depression. And new fashion revolutions were happening. Eddie Bauer marketed the first quilted down jacket, and that, like the way that heat gets trapped in the little pockets and stuff, totally like it paved the way for the modern puffer jacket that we have now. And the 30s brought about the golden age of couture in fashion, and that was reflected in skiing as well. It started to become a little bit more of a fashion-y sport rather than just focused on functionality. If you want to know more about 1930s couture and fashion, Mina Lay is a great resource for that. Ski fashion went from neutral browns, blues, and grays more into flashy colors. So in the 40s, new synthetic fabrics were being introduced. However, because of the war and the Great Depression, skiing went back to being a more exclusively elite sport. Brighter colors were still being introduced on the slopes, and it was really common for people to have reversible jackets. That way you get more bang for your buck and you have more versatility in your style. During this time, headgear was mostly just woolen caps, like wool flat caps. So the 50s is really when ski fashion starts to revolutionize. With the economy booming, skiing became very popular again, and it was a hobby for the thriving middle class. If you're my age or younger, you wouldn't know what a middle class is because Ronald Reagan ruined it. But my boomer dad who's watching this remembers an economy pre-Reaganomics. What was it like to grow up with a middle class? Who knows? We just grow up with the 1%. Ski goggles became commonplace. That wasn't a thing if you think like safety and stuff. So ski goggles were really popularized by athletes on the slopes, and synthetic polyester fabrics began to dominate over wool. Outfits became a little bit more flashy. People were going for like matching sets and in bright colors. Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield popularized the stirrup pants in the 50s, and that was also reflected on the slopes. I always want to say James Mansfield, who is a drag queen wig designer, and they obviously took their name from the actress Jane Mansfield, but sorry. Anyway, their silhouettes were becoming a little bit more popular. People were being more comfortable with like form-fitting clothing and stuff, and this is when also beanies became the norm for headwear. The 60s is known to be one of the best eras of ski fashion, and we can thank Brigitte Bardot for that and Audrey Hepburn, as well as the Royals. They were seen all over the place skiing. Audrey Hepburn was in the movie Charades, and that has a lot of like ski scenes in it. Brigitte Bardot has all these black and white photos and these beautiful outfits that is just like, oh, the aesthetic is so good. This was like the height of like glamour and elegance on the Alps. Rather than, oh, we're middle class doing this fun hobby, it was about showing off on this like expensive, elegant, luxurious hobby in the 60s. The invention of spandex happened, so silhouettes were even tighter. Plastic boots came about, so those replaced the leather boots that people would ski in, and nylon puffers were the trend. Turtlenecks and fur headwear were very popular for women, as well as a lot of mod influences. You do see how mod fashion, the shapes, the silhouettes, really translated over into ski fashion in the 60s. The idea of ski fashion itself was really popularized in the 60s. It was moving away from the strict functionality of decades prior. In the 70s, things got colorful. The ski bib became popular, especially for women. Vests, moon boots. I didn't know moon boots were a 70s thing. I thought they were a recent thing. Moon boots. I'm so stupid. I can't believe I didn't know that. Anyway, vests, moon boots, fur capes, flared pants, the fleece mid-layer, all of those ruled the slopes. Having a thin fleece mid-layer underneath your sweater or your jacket to keep you warm was key for layering. And this is when the après-ski aesthetic really started to like be solidified, as well as the lifestyle, like the whole, I can't think of a better word than aesthetic, it's so bad, but the whole aesthetic of skiing, of the luxury, etc., was becoming more popularized. The space age also had a impact on ski gear, and a lot of ski gear became more futuristic and androgynous looking. And as with the entire decade, it was about garishness. I love to see it. The 80s, this is my favorite ski era. If you thought the 70s were colorful, the 80s decided to one-up by popularizing neons on the slopes, which from a safety perspective is honestly a really good idea, because you'll be able to see those 80s snowsuits from like a mile away. I'm tripping over my words. 80s snowsuits. I feel like there were two camps for the 80s ski aesthetic. There was on the slopes and at the lodge. So at the lodge, think like Lady Gaga and House of Gucci. Think like cocaine, mob boss, furs. Very similar to the Russian coquette winter aesthetic I did a couple weeks ago. And then there were the crazy patterns, neon onesies, colorful goggles were that sort of side of the 80s ski fashion, which I love. Lots of animal patterns, shiny fabrics, bright colors. Customization was the main part of the trend. So matching your skis and goggles and gloves, or having a certain color scheme, that was really what it was about. And really customizing your gear to what kind of skier you were. With the decades going on and the changing of ski fashion, we're also like the changing of ski technology, the poles, the materials that the skis were used. I don't really know that much about that stuff. I read a little bit as I was researching for this video. This was also when it became less of a hobby and more of a true sport, athletic sport that people do consistently and have, want certain gear for certain types of skiing, that kind of thing. Gore-Tex and Thinsulate were also invented around this time, and if you don't know about those materials and you are soon to be in cold weather, highly recommend getting some gloves or boots in Thinsulate or Gore-Tex. They are very, very awesome because they keep you dry and they're very, very thin. My parents were actually avid skiers in the early part of their marriage before I was born, so like late 80s, mid 90s, or early 90s. And my mom, I actually have a picture of me wearing it, had this LL Bean Thinsulate vest that was neon hot pink. I absolutely loved it in college. I wish I had a picture of this, but she had this coral orangey pink bib as well. So they were into the 80s ski fashion. My dad has like a couple of like very late 80s, early 90s like ski sweaters still. They would like look through ski fashion magazines. Like this was when really skiing was, maybe I think skiing was most popular in the 80s, but that's just because my parents did it or something. But I feel like people were taking skiing very seriously. Again, it was less of a vacation hobby thing. It became more of like an extreme sport thing that we know of it today. So in the 90s, we got a little bit more muted. I mean, after the 80s, there was no other way to go but muted. Neons were still popular in the early part of the decade, but practicality and minimalism started to take more form towards the later part of the decade. Headbands and onesies were more popular and adopted by men, and padded gear became the norm for the most. Again, skiing was becoming more extreme, more intense, and snowboarding was being popularized. So having padded gear to help you out with that was trendy. Lycra was invented around this time. So again, tighter clothes, tighter silhouettes, tighter base layers. Balaclavas and toques became popular as headgear in the 90s. In the 90s and so on, there was new technology in sportswear happening every 5 seconds. And so it became more waterproof, more windproof, more drying, etc. If you want to know more about that, there's a really excellent book called The Golden Thread. And the last quarter of it is all about the evolution of sports fabrics. I hate athleisure with a burning passion. I think it's disgusting. But I did find that section of the book very, very interesting. And it's a pretty short book, so I highly recommend it. On that note, I've also read 25 books this year. So if you guys want me to do a video all about the books I've read, let me know. But I also have a highlight on my Instagram about the books that I've read. Anyway, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you liked it. Let me know which decade of skiing was your favorite. Mine is probably the 60s or the 80s. I just love the neon colors, but I also love the elegance of the 60s. I want to be elegant like the 60s, but I'm tacky and garish like the 80s. We'll also leave sources to what I use down below. And also leave me a comment what other aesthetics you want me to cover, because I love hearing from you. I posted this on my community tab, but I'm doing another one of those videos where I'm solving your fashion dilemmas, but this time it's going to be holiday party edition, and it can be for any holiday: Ramadan, Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's, whatever. And just let me know, hey, I'm in a wheelchair and I want to dress really fancy for New Year's Eve, or I am going to this kind of party and this is the theme, or whatever. And I'll make a video and I'll pick out some outfits for you guys and show you what I would wear, that kind of thing. So yeah, DM me on Instagram with your holiday party outfit dilemma. I would love to help you out. Follow me on TikTok and Instagram because I post content there every single day. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel because I post videos every Thursday. And with that, have a happy day. Bye.